are a highly prolific author. I mean, really prolific. How many books have you written now?
116 have been published, and there are several unpublishable ones stuck in a drawer somewhere.
116?
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of books. And how many copies have you sold?
More than 11 million around the world. Mm-hmm.
Wow, and your books have been translated into heaps of languages.
31 now.
And there are a few, you say there are a few unpublishable.
Yes, that's right.
So even someone as successful as you does have some material that they don't rate.
It hasn't happened for about 30 years, so,
right.
So it was probably while I was learning my craft, really.
So how long have you been writing?
All my life.
Yeah.
When I was 10 years old, I had a little newspaper that I used to produce and sell to my neighbours. And that's how I made my pocket money.
Oh, how cute.
I made threepence a week.
In old money.
Yes.
And then how did your career take off?
It really started about 1987 after the share market crash. I was working as an entertainer. Yeah. I was doing hypnotism shows and magic shows and things.
Are you hypnotising me now?
This eye is the one you need to worry about. The other one's okay. So I was working as an entertainer, and the market just disappeared overnight. Yeah. And I had 2 years demonstrating the Ginsu knife and things like that, which was awful. I still have nightmares about that.
And what were you doing, demonstrating?
So demonstrating products and selling them that way.
Not for you?
Not really, because you're just using the same script again and again and again.
Right, so for a creative person that would be tricky.
So I decided, I'd always been writing. My first book was published in 1972, so I was in my 20s. So I'd always been writing, and I'd been a ghostwriter. So I decided to give myself 5 years to make more money out of writing than out of the other things I was doing at the time. And that wasn't too hard because I wasn't making much money at the time. And it took exactly 5 years.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Quite interesting to actually have the discipline to give yourself a financial target. Mm-hmm. Do you think that's something that has helped you to actually pump out the bestsellers? Oh,
absolutely. And it wasn't my idea. One of my heroes was L. Stanley Gardner, who wrote the Perry Mason books. Yeah. Back in the 1960s, one of his books was being sold every second of every day around the world. And I've got a big photograph of him standing on a stepladder with his hand on top of a big pile of all the books he'd written.
Wow.
And he was a lawyer who hated being a lawyer, and he gave himself 5 years to make more money out of writing than he did out of law.
Right.
And he didn't quite succeed, and I was happy that I actually did.
So you succeeded where your hero didn't.
Yeah, yes.
And so how did you first get published? Because a lot of people, they might want to get started, but how do you actually get published in the first place?
Well, my first book was Beginner's Luck. It was in the early 1970s, and there was very strong censorship in New Zealand, and I was young and I was very liberal in those days. So I wrote a book that was sort of anti-censorship, and I sent it to the first publisher I could think of, who accepted it. So it was just Beginner's Luck.
Wow.
But they only printed 500 copies, so they didn't have enormous faith in the book.
Yeah. And did it ever get difficult? Have you ever been in a situation where you were trying to get a manuscript published and couldn't?
No. I did write a novel, and it went to 3 or 4 publishers before it finally found a publisher. Yeah. But what I do is I choose my publisher before I write the book, because every publisher has a list of what they want and what they're looking for.
Right.
And if you give them what they're wanting, they'll accept it every time.
Do you think it's true that there's a book in everyone?
Yes, but that's usually where it should stay. But there is, yes, everyone has the capability to, or has enough life experience to write a book, but whether they can do it in an interesting and a commercial way is a different matter, of course.
Yeah, now that's an interesting point about marrying creativity with commercial application. Yes. And that's obviously where you have succeeded, where others have failed.
Yes, because I'm doing it as a business.
Yeah.
It's a creative activity, and it's a hobby as well, but it also is my business.
Right. Mm-hmm. And so what daily practices do you attend to in order to keep making it work? Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm very good at not starting a book, but once I actually start, I then write 2,000 words a day until it's done. Right. And if I'm very lucky, I can be finished by 10 or 10:30, and then I can really play for the rest of the day. In the morning? Yes, I start about 8.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So I can write 2,000 words in 2 hours if everything's going well.
Yeah.
Sometimes it might take to 5 or 6, but I do those 2,000 words. And that means that every 30 days I've written 60,000 words, which is a book.
Wow.
It's not quite that simple, because obviously I write mainly non-fiction, so I need to do research and things like that as well.
Yeah.
But I'm normally researching one book while I'm writing another, so I'm sort of one ahead of myself.
Yeah.
I seem to be able to retain enough information in my head to write a book, but then it's gone.
Yeah.
So if you ask me a question about a book I wrote 20 years ago, I probably won't be able to answer it.
Yeah. Oh, well, I was going to do that, actually. Wow. So how do you think that the principles that you put into your writing business could apply to anyone in any walk of life?
Oh, they could. Yes, you need to be persistent, and if you've got the right mindset and determination, and just refuse to give in and give up. Because when I decided to become a full-time writer, everyone told me I was just being stupid, because no one in New Zealand made money as a writer, I was told.
Yeah.
In actual fact, there are a number of people in New Zealand who've done extremely well out of writing, and most people don't hear of those, because they write romance novels, and some of our children's book writers are very well known, but they're the exception.
Yeah, but you have written on a huge range of topics. How do you manage to do? Throw us out some of the titles that you've worked on.
Oh, Soulmates, which is how to find your soulmate. How to read tea leaves was an early one. A series of books on feng shui. A series of books on angels. There've been 3 novels along the way.
So have all your books been published by the same publisher?
No, I've had a number of publishers over the years, but the last 52 or 53 I've had the same publisher.
The last 52 or 3, yeah. So tell me about your latest book.
Yes, that's it here, 365 Ways to Attract Good Luck. About 40 years ago, I met a man who told me that he was never lucky. Everything he did didn't work out. And I was convinced that it was a mindset.
Yes.
Because when I was 17 in my very first job, there was a sales manager there who was the most enthusiastic man I've ever met, and he believed in luck. He was always lucky.
Yeah.
And one day I got the courage to ask him what his secret was, and I laughed out loud when he told me, because every morning he stood in front of his bathroom mirror and he looked at himself and he said, "Boy, I'm enthusiastic. Boy, I'm enthusiastic. Boy, I'm enthusiastic." He did it 3 times. And at the age of 17, I thought that was just plain ridiculous. But I tried it, and it works.
Wow.
It actually works. It worked for him, but it actually does work for me as well.
Fantastic.
Except I'm alive, I'm well, and I feel great. That's the one I do.
Brilliant. My husband stands in front of the mirror and says, "Oh, you're a handsome man. The ladies don't stand a chance."
That's where I've been going wrong. I should have done that one.
Well, I can't wait to find out all the other 364 ways
Yes.
to attract good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks, Richard.